Hi, this is the prototype of the chair that Marvin and I have been working on. This is a custom designed chair that we've created the plans for. I'm going to take you through very quickly how we got to this point and go into a little bit of the details of how what the jigs look like. Marv was tremendous in that he drew up the plans for the chair that we went through numerous iterations of design on AutoCAD, and we have this in files, okay? And that gives you an idea of the profile of the chair and the overall look of the chair. We had lots of discussions about how extreme the back of the chair was going to be, how much it would curve in, and when we got to a point that we were comfortable with, we then did the lofting of the chair. I know that's a sailing term, but we actually did lay this out onto a piece of wood to establish this final curve. Okay, and I'll show you that in a second. In addition, here's a CAD drawing of a fixture to hold the seat in place, or actually to hold the chair together while we are gluing up. And then this is a stretcher for the very top, and showing the mortises for the rails that go down through the center of the chair. Okay. Everything, there's, let me go back to the chair for a moment. There are many things that we broke the rules on, and I just want to point that out to begin with. We're now working with square stock. We work off of registration pins, which I'll get into later. These corners are not plumb, okay? Doesn't need to be, because again, we're working off of registration pins, and that's kind of the key to how we're building this chair. And the chair is either mortised or doweled together, okay? This curvature of the chair, and we actually put this onto a grid system, and we lofted it out, and we took a piece of wood, just as you would do in boat building, and we bent the wood, and we went back and forth and hemmed and hawed until we were comfortable with that actual shape. You know, so we didn't want it too severe, we didn't want it too severe, being straight up and down. The other thing that we were working with and going through this is that we had the tables for chair buildings that establish what the ideal angles are and relationships. So there's a table that tells you how far off the ground this leg should be, how much this tilt back should be, okay, and what is a comfortable angle back here. Also, if you're, they have different specs for whether this is a dining chair and a kitchen chair. Actually, I was going through the design and realized that the chair was meeting the specification for a kitchen chair, and I thought we were doing dining room chairs. Actually, we're gearing up to do 20 chairs, 10 for Marvin and 10 for me. And I probably brought it up to Marvin, and he says the reason why the chairs were short on his design is because he's building this for his daughters, and his daughters are little women, okay? I wanted my chairs a little bit longer, so not a difficult thing to adjust. We're talking maybe a ½ inch to an inch variations in the length of the legs, okay? Give you a quick view of that master plan that's sitting up here on my radial arm saw. We first lofted up, and you can still possibly see the cross hatching here in spaces where we actually established that curve, okay? And that became the initial master for establishing the back of the chair. Once this was established, and we built a jig for it, we then built a master of our leg. And if you notice, there are dowel holes here and here, which is what we register our pins off of. Okay? From here, we were very concerned with how do we bend the wood to meet this shape. Okay? And we built a jig, and this is just a test of that jig. Okay? It doesn't look like I got it right away. There we go. gives you an idea of how that jig works. Okay, let's go over there and take a quick look at that jig. So this is the jig for doing a bent laminate. We got to use up lots of scrap wood that I've had in the shop, and we, in my opinion, definitely overbuilt this, but better strong and sturdy than flimsy and wouldn't handle doing production run. This is nothing more than lots of pieces of plywood that have been cut to the curvature and sanded to the final finish. We used an interesting technique here with Teflon too, and then in gluing up the wood, we first wet the wood a little bit and then applied the glue, because that activates the Teflon 2 glue. Okay, and then we finished the curves on a drum sander on the belt. We put this onto a piece of MDF. I hate MDF, so I was really happy to donate it to this. Everything got a great coat of shellac on this, and everything was waxed down. So this goes together effortlessly. Okay, I think we're going to end up mounting this on a wall, or standing this up against the wall in the shop under an exhaust hood, because the glue that we're planning to use on this is a formaldehyde based glue, and there's danger about that. This is overkill, but I want to pull all those fumes out of the house and out of my shop. From that jig, this is the first test piece that I did on it. It came out perfect. There was no spring back. I used 1/4" Lawan, 3 little pieces, put in that using the technique that I described in gluing it, and then that's held up just fine. So that established the back here. Okay. From the back, we established the side rails, and obviously this works well for either the left or right side, depending how it's oriented. There's a jig here on the radial arm table. It just shows you how we work with the guide pins. This goes into the guide pins here and here, and that gives me my cutoff for the leg on this radial arm saw. Okay. Then to establish the mortises, we have this jig set up, and that holds the back rails in place, and we use the morting attachment on the walker turner. By the way, this is a great use of a drill press. I know it kind of ties up a drill press, but I'm fortunate that I can dedicate one of my 2 drill presses to mortising. Really does a great job. Okay, but before we even get to the mortising, what we have to do is cut the legs out. So initially, we'll take the master over here to the bandsaw, and there's a bearing here, and we'll use the bearing as a guide to, actually as a guide pin, and we'll use that to cut out the rough shape of the bandsaw, on the bandsaw. From there, we go to the routing table here, and there's a guide bearing on the routing table, right here, okay? And that will bring us to approximately very close to the final shape. And there's a jig. There's actually 2 jigs that establish both the front and back angles of the back rails of the chair, and those are hanging up here. Okay. In fact, in my shop I have lots of jigs that hang up along this back wall because, as I said, everything we do is on jigs. Okay. From there, we want to get the final shape of the back legs. Okay. and then we use this drum here on the on this drill press, and there's a guide bearing that is sitting here, screwed in right now, that pops into the drill press over here, and we use the master with the drum sander to get us to the final shape of the back rails. Hey, one of the other things that you might be noticing on my drill press is that I have bits and holders for all the most used accessories that I use on this drill bit. So I have my faucet bits, I have counter sinks in there, I have brad point bits, I have fly cutters. That is indispensable for saving time. The other thing that I've done recently is I start putting tools and accessories near the tools. I need them, so things are close to where they will be used in the shop. Saves a whole lot of time. Saves a whole lot of time of finding things. So this is not a demonstration of how many toys I have to show off. It's just that this really is a great production technique in the shop. One of the things that I don't have up here is I have we then have a router to do the round over of the edges. So that router is dedicated for rounding over the edges. That will be done after we cut the mortises. And this drill press is set up, as I showed before, for cutting the mortises, and it's jigged in such a way that I can easily move this back and forth to cut the mortises. Okay, so that's the back rails. Okay, let's go on to how we cut the front legs. Okay, this is some stock that I have milled up already on my planer. Okay, from that we come over here to the table saw. Okay, I'm going to take a diversion. Now we'll stay on the legs for now. Here's the jig that I use for the tapered legs. Okay, one of the things that I did here in doing this is, again, I'm not registering off the side, but we do is this is not marked out. I'll find the center here, the center here. That's my center line. So I can flip this over 4 times and I'll get this cut down to the exact dimensions that I want on this jig, on this table saw. Okay. Going back to the angles, I had built years ago a variable, a tapered jig. Okay. Nothing more than some scrap wood that I threw together, plywood with a hinge here. There's a T-nut here that has a thread that went through here that would lock it in. Well, once we figured out that we needed a 4-degree angle for the back geometry, we put this piece of plywood over it, which locked it in some place. So I've got to build another adjustable taper gauge, but for right now, that's my 4 degrees. From that, I ended up making lots of other adjustments to the angles. Okay, so you'll see my collection here of masters. So I got 7 degrees, I got 2 degrees, I got 2.15 degrees, I got 4 degrees, I got something that's even less, which I'm not sure. That's kind of like a shim that I use on the compound miter cut. So to get the chair miter, which is 2.15, that's the final jig here. Okay, so there's the master of the front legs. Okay. Moving to the stretchers, which is the piece that connects the left and right side of the chair together. You can see that this is white paper. We print this stuff out on on a 1-to-1 printer, okay? And we glued onto the piece of wood and we cut it out. What could be simpler and more accurate than doing that? And here's an example of the guide pins that register the master in place. This comes off, and for establishing the holes on either side where the dowel pins go in is this little quick jig here. Okay, cutting this piece took us a lot of time because we had issues about where we were registering our measurements. Working off of center lines worked really well, and being consistent in our measurements also really worked out really well. The angle or the measurement in the front is different than the measurement in the back, so you've got to figure out early on where you're taking your measurements from. And until we kind of figured that out, we really were stymied. Okay. From that, we built a compound miter slate here. Okay, and that will cut the two angles simultaneously on this jig. This is a double runner jig, so there is no play in it, and it goes onto the table saw. And then the stretcher that connects the front and rear legs is that piece in front of us. Okay, so you can see the progression of here's the full-size drawing. We glued that onto a piece of wood and we cut out the master. From the master, we made a number of jigs for cutting that piece out. Okay, here's some semi-finished pieces here that are cut. Okay, and here's the jig that cuts out the tenons on the router table. Okay. Here again are my registration pins. Okay, this will do both the left and right in one pass. Okay, we flip it over and you do the other side and you flip it again on these registration pins and it gives us the other mortiser. And then I think I won the argument that we could cut out this little corner by hand on the bandsaw. Okay, very fast way to do it. One of the other things that has really helped us tremendously is in this process that I've been building this shop, and we continue to make lots of improvements. One of the things that has helped a lot is just organizing my drills here and my marking out my layout tools here and my other things I go to all the time on my bench right over here. And the other thing that helps to keep this shop clean is that I put in a centralized dust collector system. Okay, and that's looking to the very end of the shop there, where I can add extensions onto this as I add more equipment. This runs all the way down to the other side of the shop. Don't be confused. Yes, I know there's another dust collector there, but that's destined for the my other planer that's up in my garage that is not coming down here because it's too big, believe it or not. But what I'm showing you is that the tube, which is the rolled pipe, goes back to the other side, and I have my dust collector hanging upside down from the ceiling because I wanted to minimize any resistance of doing more bends in running my dust collector. I went through many different iterations of design. I ended up with a very simplistic approach on this layout, which was to run the dust collector literally down the center of the shop. This way I was equally distanced from both the left and right side of the shop going behind me, and then I teed off here for my workbench, which is right here, and I tee and come under here for my my table saw. This is a monster. This is about 8 foot wide by 8 foot long. I rewired it from a 3-phase 3 horsepower motor that I could not lift to a 5 horsepower single phase motor with magnetic starters, and right now it's set up with a 12-inch blade in there And the outfeed table is great when I'm working by myself, and works great for a place to put things when we're setting up for other jobs. Anyhow, so back to the chair. So this is where we are right now, okay? And as I said, we're going to next be working on the back of the chair. Okay, which is the rails that go from here down to here. So we have to cut the mortises here, and then play with that jig that I showed you earlier for bending the wood. One of the things that we had a lot of problems with was establishing this angle, and I ended up drawing it full scale, cutting a piece of wood, and the cutoffs ended up being one of those tapered jigs that I have on the table there. I actually did calculate this with trig, but it ended up, I did it imperial, and they ended up with 2.15 degrees. Okay, this has been a very long process, but it's been a lot of fun, and we're having a great time, and hope to be able to show you all the finished product soon. Okay, hope you enjoyed it.